Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Liat likely to resume flights in November. This story takes the lead in our 961st edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 12th October 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. Cash-strapped regional airline Liat, which is undergoing a restructuring program, is likely to return to the skies in November, a senior government minister in Antigua has said. But Information Minister Milford Nicholas told reporters that he would not want to give a specific date as to when the airline, in which the Barbados and St. Vincent and the Grenadines governments have agreed to sell their shares, will resume its operations. Apart from Antigua and Barbuda, the other major shareholder government of the Antigua-based airline is Dominica. Earlier on this year, Antigua and Barbuda unveiled a new plan for the airline, with St. John's proposing reinvestment of $108 million and indicating that under the new plan, it is prepared to underwrite up to 50% of the required capitalization. The airline had suspended its commercial traffic in March after many Caribbean islands shut down their airports as part of the measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus. In July, the Antigua High Court appointed an administrator as the sole representative of what remains as the Liat estate. The administrator, Cleveland Seaforth, is tasked with the responsibility of reorganizing the company, Liat 1974 Limited, by cutting liabilities and realigning expenses. The airline owes creditors in excess of $100 million. Since the airline stopped its daily schedule, several smaller airlines have sought to occupy the space left by the regional airline. In other news, son of the soil and national icon of Trinidad and Tobago, Dennis Prangalang Hall, was cremated following a service at Belgrove's funeral home, which was televised live on TTT. TV6's Renessa Cutting reports.
As in life, so in death. Entertainment icon and cultural ambassador Dennis Prangalang Hall was laid to rest today with a medley of song, culture, and good, clean humor.
I listened to Lady Adana and Sprang coming out after that with I said, oh God, girl, you had throat. You had throat.
Mayor of San Fernando, Junior Agralo, remembers the Southern native for his ability to treat with serious issues in the lightest of manners.
Prangalang was our social mirror, pointing out our flaws, making us comfortable in the benign and aware of the malignant.
Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, Randall Mitchell, also turned out for the occasion, and he vowed never to let another cultural icon go unrecognized and underappreciated.
To remedy this continued oversight, this past week, the National Cultural Policy was laid in Parliament, and that policy is designed to ensure that the recognition of our cultural stalwarts, such as Dennis Hall, are celebrated and remembered for their role in shaping the vast cultural landscape that is Trinidad and Tobago.
But for some, like his wife, Natasha Nurse, his memory will live on regardless.
Yeah, when I won Queens, he said, here we're going on, ma'am. Anytime you see you win Queens and you make a semi-final, I done, you know. But I thought the done he was talking about was just resign. I didn't know that because I won Queens 2019, right? And from the time I won, he started to show signs of departure. Okay? And I am not going to give up. Anything I do as of now, I'm doing it with Dennis Hall in mind. And
may he rest in eternal peace. Renessa Cutting, TV6 News.
Still from Trinidad and Tobago, a slight ease, but not too much. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley announced new gathering limit numbers for public spaces and funerals. There was also good news for domestic air travel and water tour guides. But bars, restaurants, churches and others are going to have to hold strain a little longer. Anselm Gibbs of TV6 News reports.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says up to 10 people will now be allowed to gather in public spaces. There's also an ease with funeral numbers.
We think that we can allow 20 people to take part in a funeral.
At Saturday's eagerly awaited press conference, the Prime Minister also announced an increase in domestic flights.
We think that we can encourage CAL to run 6 flights a day to Tobago. And those flights, as you know, they are mandatory wearing of mask on board. And there's some spacing on, I think they're running at 50% per flight.
He also had good news for some people who make their living on the water.
We believe that we can start back some operations in these 2 areas by granting exemptions to Buku Reef tours and Caroni Swamp tours, those persons who are legitimately engaged in that.
But officials say the exemptions will be strictly for tours, so no snorkeling or other activities. Meanwhile, Dr. Rowley says some public service workers have been abusing the rotation system that's currently in place. So there's now going to be stricter monitoring.
The head of the public service would be instructed by the competent authority to do this as an authorized action under law, and persons who do not turn up to work on the day when they are rostered to work are to be deemed to be absent from work, with the consequences that flow from that, including not being paid.
For bars, restaurants, and places of worship, the current restrictions will remain for at least another 2 weeks. Dr. Rowley says so far the latest measures put in place have worked to suppress the virus.
But we understand that there are tremendous stresses and strains in the economy. We can't simply go on like this every week, every month, reporting these numbers and maintaining the kinds of economic and social activities that we're maintaining now. If we do that, there's a likelihood that we could, the economy itself could be damaged beyond repair.
Anselm Gibbs, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Over now to Guyana, where the police there have laid 2 charges of misconduct in public office against another senior GCOM official. More details in this report from HGP's Travis Chase.
3 days after she presented herself at the Criminal Investigation Department at Ivlery and was later detained, the police have opted to charge Deputy Chief Election Officer Roxanne Myers with 2 counts of misconduct in public office. Myers appeared at the Georgetown Magistrates Court on Friday morning, where the charges were read to her. The senior GCOM official was granted $150,000 bail on each charge. One of Myers' attorney, Ronald Daniels, who spoke with reporters outside the Georgetown Magistrates Court, pointed out that Myers' lawyers were not initially informed that she had been charged.
We wish to put on record that up to last night when we spoke to Ms. Myers, around 8 o'clock last night, no such allegation was put to Ms. Myers. And as Mr. Hughes had indicated to the court, he did not learn until about 3 o'clock this morning through the media that Ms. Myers was charged and had to report to court today. So we had no formal communication to that effect, even though we have been attending the police station quite often.
Nightly News understands that the prosecution objected to Myers being granted bail, alleging that they had encountered difficulties in locating the GCOM official at her home address or her place of employment, and that they had telephoned Myers and she did not answer.
There haven't been any witness statements. The prosecution indicated to the court that they have not completed investigations. The prosecution invited the court to have them return in 2 weeks, at which time they would be able to give an indication to the court as to the status of the investigation and whether they're in a position to disclose any statements.
According to Attorney Daniels, given that Myers had voluntarily presented herself to the police, the allegation of her being a flight risk should be shunned.
Ms. Myers voluntarily submitting herself to the custody of the police officers is an indication of someone who does not want to resist the jurisdiction of the police or to resist the jurisdiction of the court, and is certainly not someone who poses any risk of flight.
Just after the police announced that a comprehensive investigation into the March 2nd general and regional elections and the subsequent 5 months impasse, a number of GCOM officials were arrested by the police. The exhaustive list of GCOM staffers who have been detained and in some instances held in custody beyond the constitutionally stipulated 72 hours includes Chief Elections Officer Keith Lowenfield, Region 4 Returning Officer Claremont Mingo, Duarte Hetzberger, Michelle Miller, Carolyn Duncan, Denise Cummins, Enrique Liven, and Registration Officer Shifrin February, and now Roxanne Myers. In addition, former Health Minister Walter Lawrence was arrested, and Ms. Carol Joseph arrested and on station bail. During a media conference on Friday, Opposition Leader Joseph Harmon pointed out that all of the senior GCOM functionaries that have been arrested and detained are of one ethnic group, Afro-Guyanese. He described it as a political campaign of persecution and victimization. Travis Chase, HGP Nightly News.
Meantime, leader of Guyana's opposition Joseph Harmon has called out the chairperson of GCOM, Justice Claudette Singh, retired, over her silence on arrests and charges laid against several GCOM officials. HGP's Wendell Badri has the details in this report.
Madam Chairman, you are leaving a tattered legacy and should resign before it gets worse, were the utterances of leader of the opposition Joseph Harmon to the GCOM chairperson Justice Claudette Singh, retired, as he addressed the issue of arrests and charges laid by the police to several senior GCOM officials. These statements were made on Friday morning during a virtual press conference. Further, Harmon questioned the motive of the GCOM chair.
It is no wonder that the Chairman of the Elections Commission has not raised her voice in concern for the welfare of these officers who worked under her. The only conclusion one can arrive at is that the Chairman is complicit with respect to the dismantling of the GCOM.
According to the opposition leader, he learned via a letter in the press by some GCOM commissioners that Crime Chief Wendell Blanham had written to the chairman of the commission requesting documents from the body, which falls under the purview of the Chief Election Officer Keith Lowenfield, and further that these documents have been supplied to the police regardless. Meanwhile, in a press statement released by the commission on behalf of the chairperson on Friday afternoon, Justice Singh refuted these claims, stating that even though the police had requested contracts of some staff members from the commission, she did not oblige and raised this at the level of the commission, after which she sought clarity from the police as to the purpose of its request, since the documents are confidential to the commission and those members of staff. She posited that the police then clarified that it was seeking the job descriptions of the staff members. Justice Singh stated that since the job description of the officers is public information, she obliged and instructed the human resource officer of the body to supply only that information to the police. The chairperson further claimed that she does not have the authority to interfere with the work of the Ghana Police Force or any other statutory body, and that she will always ensure that the best interests of the members of staff of GCOM are protected. Mr. Harmon further lashed out at the Ghana Police Force, as well as ministers of government, Robeson Ben and Charles Ramson Jr., whom he said have been injecting themselves into investigations into the conduct of the March 2020 general and regional elections.
What is even worse is that we've seen ministers of government injecting themselves and directing the police. At least two ministers, the Home Affairs Minister, Mr. Robeson Ben, and Minister Charles Ramson Jr., have been reported of being in contact, intimidating, threatening, and coercing persons who have been detained.
Wendell Badri for the HGP Nightly News.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.